Hey guys, happy Friday. We're having a very intense conversation about lava this morning. You're gonna go snuggle with Daddy? Okay, we're eating Greek yogurt. I just lost them though. They're eating Greek yogurt with blueberries, and we're having a conversation about lava because there's some news out this morning that I was sharing with my kids. It's always fun to talk a little bit to your kids about the news because it simplifies things for you immediately, right? And makes them more clear. Although this morning I was a little bit stumped by a question that they asked. So here's what's going on this morning. The U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, just put out a report about volcanoes in America. And they haven't done a threat assessment of volcanoes for more than a decade. And so that's why it's notable, because we haven't seen anything quite like this in a little while. And basically what they're saying is that there's about a dozen, a little bit more, I believe, about a dozen volcanoes that have a higher threat assessment, not meaning they're going to, you hear that? Not that they're going to erupt tomorrow, but that, that there's a threat that they could erupt. So some of these are names that you know, like Mount St. Helens that erupted back in the 1980s. So I was talking about this with my son and my daughter and showing them pictures of volcanoes, and of course the question of lava came up, and my son's like, well, what's lava? And I was like, it's really hot rock that comes to the surface. Anyways, clearly I was wrong. I mean, it's molten rock that comes to the surface. Anyways, we were just looking into it. It's funny what you realize you don't know when you have children. I'm like, lava is hot rock that comes to the surface. Anyway, so that's something you should know today, is that survey just came out. And again, it's not predicting any imminent volcanic eruptions. It's just sort of the first threat assessment we've seen in about 13 years. And so it's notable. Jill, a member of our team on SmartHER News, found that report and sent it to us this morning. And so you'll see something a little later on, hopefully, about that today, because you don't have enough to worry about. I'm just going to add volcanoes to your list. But it's really only for the West Coast and Hawaii. So if you're anywhere else, be totally fine. The one thing I would say about this, though, is it just sort of made me think, here we are about 12 days before the midterm elections, and everyone's like, oh, this is immigration, or there's we're worried about these suspicious packages. And one of the things I think you always have to keep in the back of your mind is, no matter how big some of these issues are, it just takes one unforeseen event to change the conversation, whether that's a natural disaster, or a horrific terrorist attack, something international, something unexpected. And you just always have to keep that in mind, because we could be driving down this path saying, hey, this is the number one issue for the midterms, and then suddenly everything changes. So I will just kind of flag that for you. On the suspicious packages that we've been looking at this week, remember, all these suspicious packages were sent to high-profile Democrats and Robert De Niro, who's been a very loud critic of the president, and CNN. And as we discussed yesterday, there's a lot of inference that this must be politically motivated, but we don't have the facts to back that up. We do know who the targets are, but we don't know exactly why the person sent it. The reason why I'm cautious about that, again, is that we just don't have any information about this suspect. We don't know anything about this person. The one thing that we do know is that the Department of Homeland Security Secretary did admit in an interview yesterday that they're zeroing in on Florida as the site where they think that these packages were sent out. So that's one thing that we do know. We also know from reports from within the FBI that although the suspicious packages look to have bomb-making material in the inside, they did not have the components that would make anything explode. So as we were talking about this being very rudimentary yesterday, that's what we were talking about. Okay, suspicious packages appeared dangerous, but weren't actually, no one was in danger of any sort of an explosion happening. Does that really make a difference? I'm not sure. I don't want any suspicious packages. I don't think you do either. But it just is, as we're trying to find information about who this person is, that's adding some information. Okay, whoever this is either didn't really want these packages to explode, didn't know how to build a bomb, or something's going on here. We don't know exactly who this person is. I did get a letter yesterday from one of our readers at SmartHER News, and she was really angry at me for not saying that this was clearly a politically motivated suspect. And I can't say that as a journalist. She was saying I'm biased for not saying that, but I can't say that as a journalist because we don't know. And in previous incidents this year, especially one going back to Washington State in March where someone sent out a dozen suspicious packages, this man was clearly mentally ill. He did target political people. He did, send a package to the White House, but he wasn't well. And so he wasn't some operative. He was ill. And so that's a possibility here. And I think it's only responsible for us to be very careful with the information that we have, which is absolutely nothing about this person or people. We don't even know if it's more than one. So I just wanted you to know that. Is this a laminin necklace? No. Do you guys know about laminin though? Laminin is a company started by Missy Robertson. And Missy Robertson has created a company. She's the one that was on Duck Dynasty. And she created this company for women that are recovering from different, obstacles in their lives, drugs, alcohol, etc. And she's given them jobs. And what they do is they create these beautiful necklaces. And so it's laminin, Lamin, laminin. If you search Missy Robertson, you'll see it. And the necklaces are really pretty, and they're, very well priced between I don't know, you could find something for like $10 or you can find something for like $40. But if you're looking for Christmas gifts, it's actually a great thing because you get a little card that, says, you're helping a woman in need. And so check out her website. I do have some of her items. This is something I got when we were in Hawaii because I love the ocean and I grew up around in San Francisco. And this is my Origin sweatshirt, which is a jiu-jitsu. Well, it's a gi making company that my husband and his business partner, Jocko Willink, have worked with. And they make all the gis for jiu-jitsu practice in America. And they brought back this amazing manufacturing to Maine. So that's kind of cool. Sorry, that's not really part of the news, but those are two things that you should know. So there's my Origin sweatshirt. I didn't know what a gi was until my husband told me just recently. See, I don't know a lot of things, lava, gis, but we were learning together, and so that's what's good. Okay, here's a final thing.
Some people call it a kimono.
Some people call it a kimono, but I think of kimono, yeah, but I think of a kimono like a dress for, you know what I mean? I don't think of it anyways. So you guys got to check out Origins too. It's really, 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 really cool. Okay, final conversation I just want to have before the weekend, then I'll let you guys go because I know you're super busy. But, I was really thinking a lot about immigration because we're really focused on the caravan of asylum seekers that's headed for the U.S. southern border. And a number that's come up frequently this week is the number of 7,000. Because that's the estimate of the number of people that are in this caravan, even though we don't have an exact number. So I started thinking to myself, well, what are some of the other numbers that we should know about immigration? Because that's a number that's really sticking out. Someone can repeat that really fast. Well, what are some of the other numbers that you should know? And so I started looking at that earlier this week, and we have a card posted on today, and I just want you to take a look at it. And what I was thinking about immigration and the debate is that it's sort of like a Rubik's Cube. When you change it one direction, you get a different picture. And sometimes when you do that click, you don't like the picture that you get because maybe you disagree with the policy or the feeling. And it's one of those things that if you keep moving the cube and getting a different image, maybe hopefully we're getting closer to a more complete picture. So here's a couple things that I want you to know and things that I learned this week. So we know that the caravan is about 7,000 people. It's dropped about 1,500 as some asylum seekers found asylum in Mexico or have decided no longer to continue. About 100,000 people every year from around the world apply for asylum in the United States, and only about 20% are accepted. Remember, we talked about this earlier this week, you have to be persecuted in your own country for your religion or your politics. So 20% is accepted. Uh-oh. Okay, great. I thought the alarm wasn't off, which would mean this huge alarm goes off at our house, which we do, probably 3 or 4 times a week. We forget to turn it off, so our neighbors love us. Anyways, I didn't want to freak you out. So that's something you should know about asylum. So then I started thinking, well, we just got some numbers when it comes to illegal border crossings. We have the numbers because we look at them from November to October. So now we have a full year. They have an actual full year of data. So how many people were apprehended at the U.S. southern border? It's around 400,000. Total border apprehensions, though, is closer to around 500,000. And what we're talking about is not just people arrested for illegally crossing the border, but about 120,000 people that were not allowed in the country, that maybe came to a border crossing, said, I want humanitarian aid, or I'm allowed to come into the country, or whatever the reason, and were turned away. So that's interesting. So the amount of asylum seekers is about 100,000. Remember your Rubik's Cube. Click, click, about 100,000. The amount of people that were apprehended or turned away at the U.S. southern border is about 500,000. The number of people that are in America that have overstayed their visas, so they're here legally, but then stayed longer than they should and are now illegally in the country, is 600,000, an estimate of about 600,000 people. I didn't know that. So that's interesting. So there's another idea about like immigration in America, that we have that issue you don't want to forget. And actually that issue is bigger than those that are illegally crossing the border, at least according to estimates. Well, then you say, well, how many people are illegally in America right now? And a number that you'll commonly hear is about 11 million. That's a number that we've used for the last several years. It's an estimate that just, for some reason, just like anything else, caught on. And it's a number that people feel is acceptable. People say, oh, between 11 and 13 million. Well, just in September, these Yale researchers, and, Ivy League universities don't tend to be conservative. So, they tend to lean more left. These are researchers, though, so we'll respect them for the data that they put forward. I'm just saying it's unique what they found, and they even said that they were surprised. When they said, we want to look at the accuracy of this number. And what they found is that instead of 11 million being an accurate number, they felt that the more accurate estimate would be more than double that. So around 22 million people. They thought that was a more accurate number to describe the amount of illegal immigrants in America. So, that's a new number. I don't know if that number is going to catch on, but this is a recent number looked at by Yale researchers. Okay. Final thing, I'm just throwing a bunch of numbers at you, but final thing I think you should know is that I wanted to look at poverty, because one of the reasons that we looked at why Central Americans would be seeking asylum is violence, and we did a card stack on that earlier this week, and we found some really interesting things. For example, in El Salvador had the second amount of violent deaths next to Syria. So, it gives you an idea of just how violent El Salvador is, gang violence, in Guatemala and Honduras. So, but I wanted to look at poverty, and so what I did is I looked at the number of people in poverty in America, which is around 40 million people. And if you add up the total populations of Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, it's less than the number of people in poverty in America. If you look at poverty rates, though, the poverty rate in America is around 12%. The poverty rate in places in Central America is closer to 50%. And of course, there's also an argument about what poverty looks like in different countries. Poverty in America is going to look different than poverty for an indigenous person in Guatemala. They're going to have access to different services. But I thought I thought just on sheer numbers, which again, is not the best way to compare this. It is interesting to note that there's more people in poverty in America by our definition than those in poverty in totality in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. Like I said, I'm not drawing any consequences from this. What I'm trying to do is be curious about the numbers and think about, well, what are some of the numbers that you would need if you're having a conversation about immigration? And I think those are a couple of numbers you need to know. We can say there's 7,000 Central Americans seeking asylum, but we don't really know how many people seek asylum every year in America. 100,000. Now you know about 100,000. Okay, so how do you guys feel going into the weekend? Do you feel equipped? Do you feel good? There's going to be a lot of conversations. You might be at a football game. You might be at a Halloween party. I just want to make sure that you feel equipped. Rebecca, I agree. That's one of the things. It's very difficult to make cross comparisons between cultures and something like poverty, because it's going to look different, it's going to feel different, it's going to be different in different countries. But we're going with the data that we have. And sometimes that's all we have is just the limited information we have. That's what we're going to go with, and then we're going to give it some context for you guys to think about. All right, guys. Well, I feel good about Friday. I have a really strong cup of coffee, like super strong. I think we're ready to go. All right. Hope you guys are doing great, and I will see you this weekend. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter, definitely do so. You just go to smarternews.com. You put your email in the little box. I only send out one email a week, and basically it's a way of highlighting all the news of the week in 300 words or less, so you just get it really fast into your inbox, and that way, if you're sitting at a baseball game, you're waiting for a friend at a bar, you'll have all the kind of the information from the week in one note. And it can link you back to the website if you want to see more or read more of the articles. And if you're joining us just on Instagram, it's worth checking out the website, because one of the things I did on the website is created cards that flip instead of slide. So you click on the little sunglasses, the card flips, and you get to the end, you can click through to more sources. So you'll see, where did I get the numbers on border apprehensions? Where did I get the number on asylum seeking? Where did I find those things? Where did I team source things? And you'll actually see it, and you can read more yourself. So anyways, just want to let you know that. Okay, can you say have a good weekend? Trace? Your guys, oh, I'm sorry, we already have the cowboy hat on. We have the belt on. Serious right now. Okay. Love you guys. Have a great day and great weekend. Thanks for your support of Smart News, and I'll talk to you later. All right, bye guys.